Hello friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Holly and I learned to crochet in 2023 for my 3 boys, and now I have my own crochet business. I have patterns, I do custom orders, and I talk all things crochet on this YouTube channel. Today I want to get into all of the details of the most common yarn being used for soft amigurumi. And when I say amigurumi, what that really means is just you're crocheting a 3-dimensional shape. It's not a wearable that's 2-dimensional. So amigurumi is specifically the 3-dimensional pieces. Some people don't use soft yarn to make amigurumi, but there's a lot of people that do to make it like a nice soft plushy or very nice and soft for like a pillow decor. I wanted to go into all of this soft yarn that is being used. There is so much out there on the market, but I want to go over like the most common types because I know when I first started out, I was so lost on like what's the most common weight, what type of hook should I use, what's the most common brand, which ones are the most expensive ones, which ones are the cheapest ones, all of those things. So I'm hopeful that this video is going to really narrow it down for you on what you should kind of be looking for if you want to start getting into amigurumi and crochet. If you stick around to the end, I will also be discussing what yarn I use up most often and what's my favorite yarn. Okay, let's get down into the main ways to really categorize yarn. The first way to categorize yarn is by weight, and this really talks about like the thickness of the yarn. So you can go as thin as weight 0 or as thick as weight 7. So the lower the number, the thinner the yarn, the higher the number, the thicker the yarn. With soft yarn, typically you're going to see anywhere from weight 4 to weight 7. I personally have never seen anything below a weight 4 that is a plush yarn. So that just kind of goes into a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about. It's all coming from my perspective. I live in the United States, so that also it might be different. So if you have any other different experiences, definitely comment down below so that you can share your viewpoint with others, because I know mine's not going to be the only one, but this is definitely my take on it. Weight 4 to weight 7 is kind of the main weights you're going to see for soft plush yarn. The most common weight is definitely weight 6. And there's certain names for these as well. Weight 4 is considered worsted weight, weight 5 is bulky, weight 6 super bulky, and then weight 7 jumbo. So weight 6 super bulky is the most common that I have seen as far as soft plush yarn, but that doesn't mean it's the only one. And I'll get into why weight 6 is kind of the most common when we talk about that one. The other category for yarn is the feel and type of yarn you're going to see for this soft plush yarn. There's velvet yarn. Velvet is super soft, very buttery smooth, and like it's kind of hard not to love it. It does have a little bit of a shine to it, and that's kind of where you have to decide if you want to use it or not. But it's not a lot of options for velvet, so I don't see it quite as often as other yarns. The next type of yarn you're going to hear about me talking is chenille yarn. Chenille yarn is super soft, so buttery smooth, and it does not have a shine to it. Actually, none of the other yarns have a shine to it except for velvet. So that's kind of the specific thing that velvet has. Chenille's thing is just a very soft, buttery smooth feel. And some people complain about it because it can leave a lot of fluff everywhere, but it only is happening as you're working with it. Once you've made your 3-dimensional amigurumi piece, I have found that it is still pretty durable and it doesn't create fluff anymore. The next type of yarn you're going to be hearing me talk about is blanket yarn. Blanket yarn is soft, but it has a little bit more of a stiffness or a stickiness to it. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but if you go into your Michael's or Joann's store, if you have one close by, feel for some of the brands that I will be talking about and the specifics, and you will feel the difference between chenille and blanket. Chenille, I just consider it buttery smooth, and blanket is just like, it's soft. There's a bit more roughness with it, especially when you're crocheting. It doesn't like always slide easily on the hook. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people prefer that because it feels a little bit more durable. It feels like the plushie is going to be really like stable and it's not going to like be really slippery, where chenille yarn can be a little bit more slippery. So it really kind of depends on like what kind of project you're using, what colors are available, and personal preference. But it is super soft, and blanket has a lot of color options. A lot of color options. So I definitely see a lot of people use blanket yarn because there are just so many options available. The last category of yarn type that I'm going to be talking about is fuzzy yarn or furry yarn. This isn't as easy to find either. There's only a few colors of fur yarn and fuzzy yarn available, but it's definitely becoming a lot more popular, so it's something I wanted to definitely discuss. And then let's also talk about beginner friendly yarns of these types of yarn. I definitely don't recommend starting with any of these yarns if you're a beginner in crochet and amigurumi. I highly recommend starting with either acrylic yarn in weight 4 or cotton yarn in weight 4. I feel like that's just a really good spot to start at. Weight 4 is very, very common when you're looking at acrylic yarn. So look at those weights and create whatever you want to make. And then from there, I would go to chenille. I think chenille yarn is the best beginner friendly yarn of all these soft yarns. From there, I would then go on to blanket or velvet. And the very worst yarn to work with if you're a beginner is fur. The next thing I want to discuss are kind of the big brands that you'll see with yarn. And it totally depends on like what stores are accessible to you or how you shop, because maybe you don't have any local stores near you that have yarn, or maybe you only shop online, or maybe you have lots of yarn stores available to you, or maybe you only have one store. So it depends. I personally have a Michael's, a Joann's, and a Hobby Lobby all within 20 minutes. So I have a lot of access to yarn. And then obviously there is online shopping. Bernat is going to be one of the biggest brand names you're going to see, especially in the soft plush yarn category. That is sold at Michael's and at Joann's. So it's super, super accessible. And then each store, Michael's, Joann's, and Hobby Lobby, have their own brands for yarn. Michael's is loops and threads. So if you ever see anyone using loops and threads or you see that brand, it is only sold at Michael's. For Joann's, it's Big Twist. And for Hobby Lobby, it is Yarn Bee or Baby Bee. I don't shop often at Hobby Lobby, but when I do shop at Hobby Lobby, I have noticed that they don't really sell anything except for their own yarn brand, where Michael's and Joann's does have other brands other than their own. Another really big name brand for soft plush yarn is Premier. If you have been doing any sort of research in crochet and amigurumi from all of these crochet artists, you probably have seen Premier Parfait Chunky as a very common brand that is talked about. I personally have not used it, and I really, really need to, and especially would love to do a review with Premier Parfait Chunky and other yarns that I have used, but I've heard great things about it, and I will talk more specifically about those yarns available with Premier and actually all of these brands. I will be getting deeper into all of those. As far as Premier Parfait Chunky or the Premier Parfait Chunky XL, I think is what it's called, those two soft plush yarns by Premier, I don't think is sold in Michael's or Joann's in store. So as far as I can tell, you can only get it online. The other big yarn company that I've noticed is Hobbii, which is an online specialty online yarn store, is what I will call it. And I have ordered from them before because they have very, very specialized yarn colors and yarn types. So I was able to get something for a super specific custom order, which was awesome. But it has some cons, which is that it's only online. Usually the yarn is a little bit more expensive because of that, and you usually have to pay for shipping. But I did find a promo code or a time when they had free shipping in the US. So if you are looking to shop at Hobbii, which is Hobbii, you can probably get free shipping if you just wait a little bit. So Hobbii has 3 lines that are a soft plush yarn, and the names are Toucan, Honey Bunny, and Baby Snuggle. If you see any of those brands, that's specifically from hobbii, I'm not sure how to say it, and it's an online store. Now, there is one more brand I am going to be talking about. They don't sell a lot of plush yarn, but it is in my list of specific yarn I'm going to be discussing as far as a common soft yarn, and it is Lion Brand. Lion Brand has a lot of different lines of yarn. I believe they sell both at Joann's and Michael's in store, but they just don't carry a lot of the plush soft type. Let's go ahead and get into all of the specifics. So I'm going to break this down by weight. And then from the weight, I'm going to go into all the different brands for that weight and discuss them so that you can kind of understand what's available and what's the most common. There's a lot of yarn available if you really search, and there's too much for me to talk about. So I'm just going to talk about the main ones, the most common that I've seen, and you can kind of go from there. As far as the cost goes for all of this yarn that I will be talking about, a lot of them are very similar in cost besides a few, and I will be bringing up those few that are a little bit more expensive. If you are shopping from Michael's and Joann's, I definitely recommend you either shop the yarn when it's on sale, or you can use like a pickup online discount code in some way. Michael's typically has a sale going on between 20% to 40% every single month. So definitely watch if you can. And Joann's is running sales on their yarn constantly. And that definitely makes the yarn fairly affordable from those two places. So first off, let's talk about weight for yarn. Weight for yarn, I feel like, at least in the world of acrylics, is a very common weight yarn. But as far as polyester plush yarn, it is not super common. And I feel like just in this last year of 2024, did it actually start coming out with more plush soft yarn, especially at stores that are local to me. I usually shop locally. I don't really shop online, like I said, with Premier. So I definitely feel like it's a new realm to have soft yarn in weight for. So let's go ahead and talk about what is available now. The first yarn is going to be from Bernat, and this is called Bernat Baby Velvet. It is a velvet yarn, very clearly in the name. And if you can kind of tell from the picture, it has a little bit of a sheen to it. I've only seen this at Joann's. I've never seen this at Michael's. So you have to be at Joann's to be able to get this, or you can buy it from yarnspirations.com. That's the big company that owns Bernat. So Bernat Baby Velvet is, wait for it, this is black obviously, but it does come in 12 other colors. I do feel like the colors are super limited. There's no red, orange, yellow, blue, and so you definitely can't make like a rainbow with them. But they do have some colors available, a lot of like babyish colors. If you do want a wait for and you have a Joann's nearby, definitely check out the Velvet Bernat Baby Velvet. So the next wait for yarn I want to get into just recently came out, and it's specifically from the Loops and Threads brand at Michael's. They came out with two separate lines. I don't know why they did two lines of it, but it's basically the exact same thing. They're just in different colors. So the first one is Skinny Chenille, and the second one is Petite Purl. This is an example of Skinny Chenille yarn, Loops and Threads. This is weight 4. This is a super pretty color, but this is a chenille type yarn. It is so soft. And it's really, really, really cute. It is so teeny tiny. I cannot wait to try and make something with this size of yarn. It'll just be so tiny. As far as colors go, there are 11 colors for Petite Purl and 11 colors for Skinny Chenille. Some of them I feel like is kind of redundant, like they have two whites between the two of them. So I don't know why they did two separate whites. I wish there was a black in Skinny Chenille or Petite Purl, because that's kind of the biggest color they're missing. Otherwise, they have a decent variety for how few colors there are. But that is really the only thing else that's available for Wait For. So if you want to start doing a project in Wait For yarn that's cute and miniature and using a soft yarn, you're going to have to go for either Bernat Baby Velvet or Loops and Threads Skinny Chenille or Petite Purl. Next, let's get into Weight 5 bulky yarn. The first one I want to talk about is Velvet, which is Bernat Velvet specifically. I have another black Bernat velvet. I've been using this, so I don't have the tag on it, but this is Bernat velvet. So it is just a little bit thicker than the Wait for Bernat baby velvet. It is very similarly, honestly, between the two of them. They are so similar, and this is something very important to notice about yarn is you really should see it in person and feel it in person, because sometimes the differences between weight 4 and 5 or 6 and 7 between the different weights doesn't seem very different. I've also seen and heard that like between different brands it can be very different as well. Like Premier Parfait Chunky weight 6 versus Loops and Threads weight 6 versus Bernat weight 6 all kind of give a different size because their yarn is just a little bit different, even though they're all categorized as the same weight. For the Bernat velvet, I do feel like it's just a little tiny bit bigger or thicker than the weight for yarn of the Bernat baby velvet. But what is very nice is that there are 15 colors available. So a little bit more color variety for that one. And they're really pretty colors, but I will say there is no orange. I like there to be every color of the rainbow along with brown, black, and white. And they don't have orange. Otherwise, they've got a decent selection. And Bernat Velvet is found at Joann's. I don't think it's sold at Michael's, at least not in store. So if you want that one, go to Joann's. The next Weight 5 yarn is also pretty new, I think in 2024. This is the Big Twist Posh yarn. I think it's described online as chenille yarn, but I would not call it chenille. I have black. This is my only Big Twist Posh, but it feels more blanket to me. So I would consider this a blanket. But when I was at the store and I was feeling the other colors, some of them were softer and felt a little bit more like chenille. So maybe it's more of a mix, and it depends on the color you choose, which is very true. It does depend on the color you choose sometimes and how it works. But this black one that I have is very much like a blanket. There is another line of Big Twist. Now, Big Twist is Joann's, so Big Twist Posh you can find at Joann's. There's another one called Big Twist Baby Bear. Big Twist Baby Bear is more chenille. I consider this one chenille, and then Posh to be more of a blanket. So all of this yarn that I've discussed for weight 5 can be found at Joann's. The Big Twist Posh actually has 36 colors available. Wow, that's incredible. Way to go, Joann's, for providing such a color range for a new line in the yarn industry. I love it. Unfortunately, the Big Twist Baby Bear line at Joann's, which is more of the chenille feel, only sells 13 colors. So those colors are very small. That's a very small number. But I do feel like you could definitely mix Baby Bear and Posh within the same project because they are fairly a similar feel. And even like the thickness of them, they are pretty similar with the thickness. Now, there is one more weight 5 yarn that I want to discuss that I've been seeing pop up on my social media a lot, and it is Lion Brand Feels Like Bliss. It's a fuzzy type yarn, and I think they came out with it kind of to compete with fur yarn. Fur yarn is just super, super impossible to crochet with, and I feel like they wanted to come up with like an alternative way to have a furry feel, but not have it be impossible to see, and it came up with Feels Like Bliss yarn. I personally have never worked with this yarn. I have seen that it's still hard to work with, but not as hard. The projects that I have seen with Feels Like Bliss yarn, so cute. So, so cute. So if you do want kind of this texture feel, this fuzzy, furry look, Lion Brand Feels Like Bliss. They sell it at Michael's. And I have 2 Michaels pretty close to me, and one of my Michaels doesn't sell this at all, which is why I don't have it, but my other Michaels does. So check your Michaels to make sure it does sell Lion Brand Feels Like Bliss. Otherwise, you should go to Lion Brand website. But this yarn has 14 colors available, and it really has a pretty good variety. Let's go ahead and talk about weight 6 yarn, Super Bulky. This is, like I said earlier, the most popular soft plush yarn that I see around. And it's obvious because there is the most available colors and brands for weight 6. So I'm going to start off with the ones that are available at Joann's. First one is Bernat Blanket. It is so soft. And I've talked a little bit about blanket yarn specifically, but Bernat blanket carries over 100 colors. Yeah, I said that right. 100 colors. And not only do they have like Bernat blanket, they have a ton of other lines that kind of like branch off of the Bernat blanket. For example, they have Bernat baby blanket, and they have Bernat speckled, and they have Bernat mystical, and there's just all these other types of Bernat blanket branch lines of yarn, but they're all weight 6 and they all have this blanket feel, so it just gives you such a variety to choose from for your project. And they are sold at both Joann's and Michael's. I know I said I was starting with Joann's, but this is at Joann's and Michael's, so it's really easy for me personally to get Bernat blanket, and I love how many colors there are available. Now, they don't always have 100 colors in store, but if I really need a specific color, I can order it. And because they have so many colors online, usually the store has a decent amount that I can choose from. And then we get into Joann's specific blanket yarn that they carry as well, which is called Big Twist Plush. It is very comparable to the Bernat blanket. I would say it's maybe a little bit thicker and I think a little bit harder to crochet with, but I have used Bernat blanket and Big Twist Plush within the same project and it worked great. Big Twist Plush has 36 colors available, and that's great. That's awesome. They have a great variety, and it's at Joann's. So having Bernat blanket at Joann's, having Big Twist Plush, you got a lot of options available. The next one I'm going to talk about is Michael's brand Loops and Thread. They came out with 2 lines for their weight 6 super bulky yarn, and they're like the exact same thing. So one is called Sweet Snuggles Lite, and the other one is Chenille Home Slim. They are the exact same, other than colors available in those 2 different lines. So I'm pretty sure this one is Sweet Snuggles Lite, and it is a chenille type yarn. Loops and Thread Sweet Snuggles Lite carries 18 colors, and Chenille Home Slim carries 22 colors. And that's just their solid colors. They do have a few other lines that branch off of this that are multicolored or speckled or tweed or something like that. So there is more that you can look at other than the solid colors. But both of them are chenille. They're super soft. There is another one I want to talk about that's from Michael's, and it is their faux fur yarn by Loops and Threads. This is super furry. I don't know why Michael's decided to do this with their faux fur yarn, but when you buy it, it looks like really nice and thick, but this is actually 3 strands of the yarn wrapped together. So if you just want to, stretch your money with this yarn, you can try and de-strand it and get more for your money, which is always nice, right? Or you can just leave it as it is and not give yourself a headache. The faux fur yarn at Michael's, though, only comes in 6 colors. So that is really disappointing. It is very limiting. If you want to create something in fur, you have to use those colors. So as far as Michael's yarn goes, that's all of the yarn that they carry. They don't really carry anything specifically from Loops and Threads. That's a blanket yarn. They do carry Bernat blanket, and then they carry their chenille yarn, which is called Sweet Snuggles Lite and Chenille Home Slim, and then they carry the fur yarn. Now, that's basically Joann's and Michael's. Hobby Lobby does carry chenille yarn and blanket yarn. They carry their own brand. I'm not going to talk about it because it is just not something I see often. I see a lot more people talking about Bernat blanket and Loops and Threads and Big Twist. So I had to draw a line somewhere. But if you have a Hobby Lobby near you, they do sell very similar, very comparable blanket and chenille yarn. Not a big color selection, but if that's all you have, definitely try it out because they work. Let's go ahead and talk about Premier Parfait Chunky. Premier Parfait Chunky is weight 6, super bulky, and it is just like, I feel like it's the GOAT of yarn for crocheters. So it is, again, online. I've never seen that specific line from Premier at Michael's or Joann's or Hobby Lobby. So you have to buy it online, but they do have 53 colors available, which is another reason why I think a lot of crocheters love using Premier Parfait Chunky. and I hear lots of good things. It is chenille, and I think what I have seen is that it's pretty comparable to Loops and Threads, Sweet Snuggles Light, and Chenille Home Slim, but I personally would love to try that out and compare them. The other line that I have seen a lot from Premier that is a weight 6 is Premier Basics Chenille Brights. I don't know if this is chenille or if it's blanket. It looks blanket to me. I personally haven't tried it. I haven't used it, so I don't know. But I have always felt like that's the comparable line that Premier made that's like blanket yarn. So I'm going to go off and say that that one's more of a blanket yarn, even though it says chenille in the name. I'm sure it's very soft, but I don't know why they're saying chenille in the name. Comment below if you have any advice on that. Then the last weight 6 kind of general thing I'm going to be talking about is from Hobbii, Hobbii. I don't know if I'm saying that right. They have Baby Snuggle, Toucan, and Honey Bunny. I have heard crocheters use this brand, use this line of yarn, but it looks like it's chenille. It looks beautiful, soft and buttery. Baby Snuggle has 34 colors. Toucan has 34 colors available, and Honey Bunny has 36 colors available. So I feel like between all three of those, you got a big variety, but the cost, you are not getting a big skein when you are buying from Hobbii. You are getting a very small skein for the amount, and you are paying a lot more for it. So if you can avoid buying from them and save money, I would recommend going to Michael's or Joann's or online and really looking at how many ounces or grams are you getting for that amount of money. Just for reference, most of the yarn that I've been talking about is about $1.14 per ounce, but on Hobbii, theirs is like over double that. It's like $2.62 per ounce. So it's a lot more money. That is all I'm going to be talking about for weight 6 yarn. It's a lot, I know, but in general, you're going to be getting a lot from Joann's and Michael's. Joann's has a lot of the blanket yarn. Michael's carries some of the blanket yarn, but has also the chenille yarn and the fur yarn as well. Okay, last but not least, it is weight 7 yarn, which is considered bulky. And disclaimer, even though something says it's weight 7, don't take it to mean that it is going to be the same thickness as all other yarn that is weight 7. We've kind of discussed this a little bit, but it is very important to remember this for weight 7 yarn. Weight 7 jumbo yarn, I see a lot of people using this for blankets to make really quick, thick blankets. But they can also be used for making really jumbo-sized amigurumi items such as pillows or plushies or loveys. The first one I want to talk about is from Bernat. There's two that I see the most often. One's called Bernat Blanket Extra. This one seems like a regular jumbo size yarn to me and is one you could definitely use for any of your projects that you just want to make bigger. There are 27 colors, so that's pretty decent, but obviously not like the weight 6 where there was over 100 colors. Lots of variety, and some of them are even like multicolored and have a different like design, not just solid. The other Bernat line I want to talk about is called Bernat Blanket Big. This is considered jumbo, but if you look at the recommended hook size, for Bernat Blanket Extra, it is 15 millimeters, and for Bernat Blanket Big, it is 25 millimeters. And if you go in person, both of these are sold at Joann's, maybe at Michael's. But if you see them in person, you're going to see one is super, super thick, which is the Bernat Blanket Big. It is huge, very, very thick. And again, it's kind of marketing towards the big blankets that you can make really quickly. But that's kind of what it's for. Of course, you can use it for a plushie though and make a ginormous plushie. That would be awesome. Just keep in mind that even though they say weight 7, they can be a very different thickness. The other weight 7 yarn at Joann's is Big Twist Favorite Faux Fur. And this is one I really haven't explored much. I didn't really notice it until just like recently, but this is awesome. They have a lot of fun colors for this. They have 20 colors available, and some are like these really fun, bright colors. Big Twist Favorite Faux Fur is amazing that it has 20 colors because the one at Michael's that's weight 6, unfortunately, they are different weights. It is only in 6 colors. So to have 20 colors now available, honestly, I should have bought both of those to try and compare the like weights and the thickness, but I feel like you could probably mix the two if you really wanted to. If you wanted to have part of your project from the loops and thread line, that's weight 6, and from the big twist line, that's weight 7, I think it might work. But anyways, it's really awesome that it has 20 colors available. So I definitely need to get on that train and start using that yarn. So now let's talk about Michael's weight 7 jumbo yarn. They sell chenille jumbo yarn, which is awesome because Joann's does not. Theirs is called Sweet Snuggles and Chenille Home. So they're, again, the exact same thing, just different colors. Sweet Snuggles carries 22 colors and Chenille Home carries 25 colors, and that's just of solid colors. They do have a few other options as far as multicolored, but I usually stick with just like the general solid colors of those because that's the biggest selection. Those are going to be your chenille options are at Michael's for weight 7. There is another option if you want to go for chenille for weight 7 and not use Michael's. You can do Premier Parfait XL. They have 26 colors online, so it's decent, but that's kind of surprising that Michael's actually carries more colors than Premier online. I think their specialty definitely lies in Premier Parfait Chunky, but XL is a good option to use as well. Okay, so that is it. Those are kind of the most common yarns you are going to be seeing in the crochet community. Like I said, there is some at Hobby Lobby that I'm really not discussing on here much, but a lot of it's kind of the weight 6, weight 7 type of yarn, blanket and chenille. That's the most common out there for sure. And I feel like blanket is very, very common, and chenille size 6 is very, very common. But I'm excited to kind of see what this next year is going to bring as far as weight 4 and weight 5, and if maybe some new lines are going to come up. I would love to continue to talk about those if I see any more come up. And so definitely subscribe if you're interested in this, and let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to review. As far as what I like to crochet with, my personal favorite is definitely Michael's Loops and Threads Sweet Snuggles Lite and Chenille Homespun line. I love it so much. It is so soft and buttery. It is so smooth to work with, and I just want to touch it all day long. Blanket's still nice and fine, and I love the colors available. I hope that more colors will come out for Sweet Snuggles Light and Chenille Home Slim, but for now, they have a decent color variety, and I'm really happy with it so far. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I sure hope that this helped you get a better understanding of what yarn is out there, what's most common, which one should you use. There is a lot of variety and a lot of options just from local stores, at least for me in the US. Michael's and Joann's and Hobby Lobby have some great options that are very budget friendly. So check them out, look at the ones I've discussed, and happy crocheting.